Hello and welcome. This is Talent Tribe Television, and I'm Selwyn Thomas. Every Saturday around 4 p.m., we go live through Facebook and YouTube channels, and we try and network with the HR fraternity. Now, the purpose of this channel is to update our knowledge, talk to thought leaders, and share and through their sharing of experiences, we gain. So there are interviews, there are panel discussions, and there are discussions that relate to a particular topic. So thank you for joining me today, and we've got a very interesting topic, and we also have a wonderful panel of guests today. So without wasting much time, I'll introduce you to the topic. So today's topic is talent, and we've got Mr. Deenadayalan and Selvam George, both very senior, experienced HR professionals, having worked in the top industries within India and some of them overseas. So let's get moving straight away. Welcome, Dean, and welcome, George, and good to have you both here. And let me get started. Talent is something that we hear about much these days. We've come a long way. There used to be personnel. We talked about human resources. We talked about a lot of other things. That the nomenclature, the name has changed quite frequently and periodically. It has changed the way that we look at these resources. Now, what about talent? What are your views? What do we mean when we say talent? Shall we get started with Dean first, please? You there, Dean?
Dean, can you hear?
Sorry, George, I'll let you get going and before Dean.
Okay, I will get going till Dean gets ready. Yeah, I always have this question between the skill and talent, and I used to have a Venn diagram. The Venn diagram, 3 circles. One circle is called passion, what I'm passionate about, and the second circle called skill, capabilities which I acquire on the way to deliver a job. Call also is competency along with the knowledge, skill, and attitude. And the third circle is the need. Now I'll come to the first 2 circles, the passion and skill. I develop a lot of skill because of the demands of the job, of the environment, whatever. But some of the skills come to me very naturally because of the likeness, or I'm passionate about it. And that's what I call the subset of the skill, which is called talent. So in normal parlance, we interchange. So one of the questions I will have for the panel, and I will also share my knowledge whether skill and talent are exactly the same or one is a subset of another. We can come back to that. Over to you.
Right, that's very interesting, George. Let me try and see if I can get Dean.
Yeah.
Give me a moment. Dean, are you there? Can you hear us? You okay, Dean?
I think he's in.
Okay, good. Latest on the Dean.
So for the benefit of Dean, I will shorten what I said. Dean, he asked a question to you about talent, and since you were coming in, I was about to answer. And in short, what I said, we are interchangeably doing, equating the word skill and talent. I believe the talent would be a subset of the skill, which I'm more passionate about and which come naturally to me. This may be my experience, my opinion, but we will listen to you first, and then we can take it forward. Over to you.
I'm not very sure.
That's you're echoing, Dean. You probably have got more than one sound source. You have 2 browsers at the moment. You probably have to close one and then. Can you hear us now? Yep, that's fine. One's gone. This is better now. You okay, Dean? Now we can speak now.
Okay. To me, talent is something. I'm not sure whether I can describe it the way most of us understand talent. Talent is nothing to do with your qualification. the way you reflect, the way you execute, the way you deliver, the way you think. Uh, of course, the thought leadership doesn't come into talent at all, many a times. So talent is something what we see as the end outcome and not pre-defined process. So it's a little bit of a tricky issue from my view on talent.
That's,
Okay,
yeah,
if I can elaborate to what Dean says. Okay, let me put it this way. On one hand, I have the skill and competence, which is related to a demand from the job or an environment, whereas a talent is more personal. It's innate. Can I say that?
Absolutely, it is innate.
Okay.
and
Over to Selwyn.
also, yeah, and also think what Dean means, I'm not too sure. It's about outcomes.
It's a combination of both input and output. And many a times, very honest, whenever resumes come to me, I put it in a dustbin because resumes don't reflect the talent.
Correct. Correct. Right.
You are right. You are right. Most of the resumes actually reflects the knowledge and skill. Not even that, it reflects the experience. And we assume that the experience has given results, and we assume that the results have a correlation to the competence, and we assume that skill is one of the part of the competence, but talent is little deeper. You're right.
Absolutely. Especially when Boyati spoke about behavior, even interviews, he talks about 26 hours, 32 hours of interviews. And today we decide a candidate on 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Good. That probably explains, how the industry now started looking at. We hear about talent acquisition, talent optimization, talent management. The focus is now very much onto talent, and it makes a lot of sense hearing from you both. Now, I've heard this concept before. It's not mine, and I probably borrowed this from my earlier conversations with Dean and probably George, you as well. Talent buying and talent growing. Am I right?
True.
Right. So there is a bit of a divide in that. Some industries or some organizations resort to talent buying, a short-term solution, and there are organizations which look at talent growing. What are your take on that?
Yesterday I was in a interesting conversation where I was a participant, where they gave the example of Unilever on a concept called Isization, which they did 70 years ago. Indianization, Brazilization, Nigerianization, where the myth that global talent needs to be imported, whereas they said no, local talent can be exported. And Unilever made a difference, and that's how you now see Hindustan Lever's talents are all over the world. So when they spoke about Isization, if I could relate that Isization to locally vocal, and not from a political angle, how much we invest in understanding the talent.
Good point, Dean, because if I can take a thread from whatever we discussed earlier, if the talent is more related to the persona, and the competence and the skill is more related to the job and the organization, does the organization only look at what is required by the job description, the ASK, the attitude, skill, and knowledge, or are they looking at the human resource, that person as a whole, and nurture their talent? Even when Selwyn said talent management, one of the critique people say talent can only be nurtured, skill can be developed and managed. I like to listen to you guys too.
Developing on what you spoke, George, do we really look at career orientation of human beings? There could be some people who are balanced. For them, work as well as family is important. There will be some people, for them, achievement orientation at the cost of family. For some, they want to be in the visible game. They will do anything to be in the visible game. Right, wrong, manipulation, forget all that. But they have to be in the visible game. But that is their personality, innate potential. There's a positive side of it for a PR job. So we never look at career orientation. We only try to put what the JD says. We make a competency frame, all that from an organizational perspective. Do we look at the career orientation perspective?
Good point.
And I was talking more also in terms of talent buying and talent growing. I think, Dean, you've got a significant experience with that way you talked about earlier to me when we did this one-on-one. So do you want to share some of your experience, and you, George, you can follow as well?
Somehow I have always believed you look at the human being, don't look at the qualification. And even I would go one step further, under hire for overperformance, which would mean look at the human being and see maybe somewhere there's a gut coming into this. If you ask me, I have a scientific evidence. I could only say success stories where the grassroots intelligence is never. He runs a family. He sometimes even leads a leadership role when it comes to representing employees. But somehow we see that as a negative trait than looking at it as a positive trait. And whomsoever are such leaders, if only directed properly, can be outstanding entrepreneurs or outstanding internal managers. So somehow we have our own frames when we look at talent, and anybody raising a dissent to us is a little bit of a discomfort. So there's a tremendous initiative taken for somebody to even raise a dissent. And a dissent is a positive way of looking at it than saying, no, it is anti-organization. And therefore, for me, looking at a very good articulation in English is not talent. Can we look at people for what they have achieved, or even look at people if they fail? We have those people who have failed are risk takers. Somewhere, none of our questions look at the failures. Most of our questions look at successful experiences. And some of the challenges when we do in the businesses, do you have an engineering industry experience? When you're dealing with people, industry doesn't matter. And but all of us get into the stereotype with a box called job description, with a box called sector specific skills. And very interestingly, if I had to say how the talent Aravind Eye Hospital measured was, if McDonald's can supply the product in 15 minutes, can I do this in eye surgery? Can I do eye surgery 15 minutes? And they achieved it. How did they do it? They started looking at what are the processes that need to be done, how that can be delivered, and can that be delivered by people with lesser qualification. So somewhere the qualification frame gets beating, and thanks God now Google and EY have come back and said we don't anymore look at qualification, which is what we started attempting 30, 40 years ago. And slowly we have seen some success stories. Many of the guys, George will vouch for that, who joined as team members in Titan or in different parts of the world, leading various professional roles or building their own enterprises or leading their social enterprise. Would never have gone through a job description or an interview and a good English noise process.
What about you, George? Any?
Wonderful. Let me go back to your question on the talent buying and talent growing. Yes. Let me equate that to hunting and farming. The hunting is, I want something to eat today. I go kill the animal, eat for my consumption. That is what some companies do. I want this talent today, ready-made as per the resume, whatever I will consume, and then they grow, they don't grow, I will throw, whatever. Some companies do that. Some companies do the growing, which is the agriculture. I sow the seed, I develop that, it will grow. And even if it grows beyond the boundary of the organization, I'm okay. So Dean has a lot of experience, and one such was the Titan story which he narrated. And he put the seed there, and it grew, and we person, as he said, rather than just what is fit into the square. Even if the person has to grow beyond That's called the career development, the career planning. Career is very person-oriented, but what we do is possibly the succession planning, which is organization-oriented. And now, is there benefit one over the other? If you are looking at short-term business results, possibly the hunting will help. But if you are looking at long-term organizational effectiveness and the name to fame, I think the farming or developing, nurturing really helps. And Dean would have a lot of case studies on that.
Not only I agree with you, George, the other side of the story is if we really start nurturing, I use a new jargon called retention. These nurtured kids will not stay with you for more than 7 or 8 years, but it's a good business win. So if the visionaries think through that whole process, we need to invest in people and build them. Short term, maybe first year, they may not give you the best. Second year onwards, you get far better productivity than the normal. And for me, Dr. Reddy's is a classic example. For last 20 years, they have only gone through this model. And 80% of these so-called blue-collar employees are now today manager quality all over the world. So there's something called innate. I don't know whether I should use this word native intelligence, but there's something called innate, which our prisms or selection criteria or various instruments we use doesn't look at it. Do we look at who is your best class teacher? If you find out what Mr. Abdul Kalam says, his fifth class teacher made him what he is today. So in none of our interviews, we talk about the class teacher. So somewhere the passion gets triggered at the early part of the childhood. That part is not in most of our selection processes.
Yeah, good. You trigger a very, very close to my heart word, the passion. While I was designing the performance appraisal system for one of the companies, normally we give 50% weightage to the results and 40% to the competence. And then the 10%, some people give the organization values, culture, etc. This company CEO said, let's give the 10% to the passion of the person, the talent of the person. Then I argued, saying that the passion or the talent may be outside the organizational purview. And that company was in something like a KPO type. But this guy wrote passion as piano. So I asked the CEO, do you want to encourage that? That's outside the purview. He said, yes, I want to give the 10% weightage for his passion, his personal talent, piano learning. And we experimented that. And the story ends like this. Appraiser to start the conversation with his journey on the piano from level 2, level 3, level 3 to level 4. And slowly, the appraiser was coached to use that achievement motivation in the organization job. So ultimately, it yields, but don't do it the yielding. Do it with the genuine interest of developing the person to his full persona. You get the benefit anyway.
That's good. I'm still stuck with one of the things that Dean briefly mentioned, and he kind of went away from that. Can you talk a little bit more about the native intelligence, Dean? I know this is something very close to your heart.
Okay. The native intelligence is something which is somewhere innate, and which is because of the environment in which you have grown, or because of your parents, or because of your peers, or friends, or teachers. But because of the organizational pressure, or for you to follow certain rules and regulations, you don't exhibit it. And when you don't exhibit it, it doesn't come out. And you tend to do one level job below your capability. Just to give a small example on native intelligence, I don't know, George, you recall, we did a small hobby inventory based on which we created varied forums in Titan.
Yes.
And if you know, some of them have become excellent orchestra team performing in the various television channels while working in Titan itself.
Correct.
Okay. And when you do this hobby inventory, in that hobby itself, we had 3 or 4 categories, like when you said level 1, level 2, level 3, whether you played for the school, whether you played for that. So that way we need to get into that. If you have seen, we had something called wallpaper, where people started expressing their talents in terms of writing, poetry, or whatever skills. How much we can convert that into a business advantage is something in today's context, in the digital context and analytics context, is very, very powerful. Otherwise, what happens is, to put it very humorously, we are very, very good in speaking about coaching, but we are very good in poaching. So, are we really investing in people, in triggering those innate potentials, which is not in the biodata? So, when I talk about native intelligence, and most of the native intelligence comes from the mother tongue. Whichever be the mother tongue. And probably ICICI Bank was the first to even say all the interviews will be conducted in mother tongue, irrespective of which location they are.
Okay.
And they had a very good success in terms of the growth. Where people tend to articulate better in the mother tongue, but today a country like India is mixed. Where in the house also we speak English. And somewhere that originality is getting lost. I'm not being chauvinistic here, but the thinking is a little more innate and powerful when you start articulating in your own mother tongue. So when I talk about native intelligence, some of the success stories, if I had to talk about, is if you can see a Suguna story, or a Shanmugappa, who was a porter in Bangalore railway station, became a role model for Abdul Kalam. And today he runs 100 crore empire with the 8th standard qualification, and Abdul Kalam calls him a role model. And he has ideas for the Indian economy. How many of us really understand such sort of talents? Because they would not have any of the rubber stamps what we are all used to. And we have such success stories, and most of the family businesses, if you see the promoters, they may not be highly qualified. Maybe the younger generation is. But how did they build such an empire? So, are we missing out on this part of understanding the innate capabilities beyond this job description frame? And connect that to the see, ultimately organization has to survey, as George said, the immediate hunting needs are there. How do you balance both?
But good point, Dean. But it makes me think in two ways. One, we look at all of the successes, especially within the entrepreneurial canvas, like the Windows and Steve Jobs and all of those. We know that academically they're not great, but they succeeded. So there's, and I get what you're saying. But on the other hand, do organizations also want to look at native intelligence? I tend not to think so, because we are used to looking in a particular templated, very boxed kind of a review, and we try and look for those talent that will fix into that particular mold and which we think will succeed. So I'm thinking on one side there is intelligence, but on the other side we probably don't want to look at that intelligence.
I will partly agree with that. Partly, I will also narrate one of the success stories which happened. It's a multinational company. I don't want to name the company. It's a large organization which has presence in many places. And this happened in. This guy went for the interview. He has some sparks in him, but he could not communicate because English is not normal spoken language, as Dean said. And they didn't allow him to speak in Tamil, so he answered something and was rejected. Then his boss said, I want to spend 2 minutes with him. Though you have rejected, I want to spend 2 minutes with him. So this guy went to that guy, and that guy said, forget all the questions. You tell me what you are good at. That guy said, I'm good at watching movies. What's a value addition for you? I do research on movies. What research you do? I do look at the directors. Then he asked 5 questions. Who is the director for such and such movie? Yes. What was his previous movie? He answered everything. Then he said, how much time you spend on this? I spent this much time. So what you got out of that? Now, if you ask me to write a thesis on this, I can do. Okay, how you can help me on my business with this? He said, you are in this business. I can do business analytics. I can do reference analysis. Hired.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
to connect what George said, that's what Biotis also speaks about when he talks about behavior event interview, where he starts understanding the behaviors at various time frames. And he also says the interview should not be at one point of time, it should be at multiple points of time, so that you can understand and get the insights of that human being.
So there's a question for you, Dean, that Narshiman has asked for you. Is human need to be seen really as, is human need to be seen really as a resource? Question to Dean.
Definitely not. I think, yes, probably picked up this from Jaggi Vasudev. Human is not a resource, is what Jaggi keeps speaking. To me, human is human. There's a potential. Every human has a tremendous potential. And a resource is one part of the potential.
I am with Dean. Yeah, human being is far more than the other resources. If the 5 M's are the resources: men, material, machine, method, and money. And the 4 resources are depreciating resources. Only the human being, even if you consider as a resource, is the appreciating resource. So if we tie that as along with the other resources and look at the return on investment on a quarter-to-quarter basis and bracket them 80-10, whatever, that's not the right way of dealing with that human being, even if you call that as a resource.
No, I agree with you. Let's kind of deviate slightly, and I want to check with you because you talked about careers, we talked about growing talent and all of that. What is your take on millennials? Millennials really don't have a long expectation in terms of career or employment. They belong to a generation where everything is instant gratification. I want it now and they're done with quickly. Organizations also, the gig economy in particular, is also moving towards that way in order to tap that and benefit from that kind of an expectation and behavior. So how does that fit into this growing talent and as against millennials who've got a very short-term expectation?
I see it as very positive for 2 reasons. It puts a pressure on the organization to get the best out of the short-term stayers, and at the same time, it gives a second career and a third career for the individual. And I'm not sure it's a gratification. It's something which is burning in him, and that satisfaction doesn't come in the organization which he is working. And since we are all seen the era of long stayers, short-term stayers, mid-term stayers, and short stayers, we probably use this frame of long-staying frame in our articulation. I think short stayers do contribute. There's nothing wrong in how do we get the best out of the short stayers is the challenge what HR has to look at.
But is the organization also looking at going forward, wanting additional stayers? Because I'm looking at most companies, again, an overseas experience, where the number of the permanent employees have actually dwindled and really want to focus on short terms where there is, there's no retirement age, and we look at very short term and contractual employment.
With respect to the millennial, let me give you two scenarios. One, software company. There is a resignation letter in front of the CEO. The CEO asked the guy as part of the exit interview and asked him, what made you to leave? He said, this company, understanding my uniqueness, they're not recognized me, I'm going. So how long you are in this company? 3 days. Okay, some of the elders will be laughing, but according to him, 3 days is good enough for my boss to understand my uniqueness and use me, and I would have given the results. So, one viewpoint. Another company, it's a 4-wheeler manufacturing company. A millennial came in for the interview, and he answered every question very rightly, engineering questions, and they were about to hire him. And he said, will you get into 2-wheeler at any point of time? And they said, no, we are on 4-wheelers. oh, my passion is on two-wheeler, you can keep the order. I just came for an experience, and I thank you for that. So, moral of the story, millennial want immediate gratification. Positive, negative, up to us to handle. The millennials really know what they want to have, what they do not want to have. The specifications are very clear. Now there is a generation gap between the so-called the appraisers and the appraisee, and many companies, one of the agenda item today is to how to manage the millennial expectation. But most of them are seeing from the appraiser's angle, whereas as the input, if you see from the appraisee, the millennials angle, problem will be solved. You can use the shorter resources for repeated cycle of time. So say, for example, these high-performing millennial, they're going to anyway stay short and go away because their paths may not be permanently matched with the organizational path. But if you really want to get the best return on investment, even if you focus that way, unless you understand his passion and design the job around him to get the best out of him, we are unnecessarily wasting his time and the organization time. Over to you.
Just to add to what George said, I had a very interesting TED Talk person from Mysore. He was a school dropout. He invented a motorcycle which can be carried in a briefcase. And I took the trouble of connecting him to few leading two-wheeler industries, but nothing happened. But look at, he's a young millionaire. He has done something which, no parking problem, you carry it in your own hand. And it can run 60 kilometers. He demonstrated that in a TED Talk. And do you think that millennial is instant gratification? There are such millennials where we are not realizing the potential of such millennial, and we are seeing from our frames. Yeah. Second, my suggestion to looking at talent would be, like when we do an exit interview when the person resigns, can we also introduce an exit interview? You are okay for yesterday's business. For today's business, can we do an exit interview? A little controversial.
No, that's actually been put to practice in one of the organizations that I work for, in the sense, like, not only do an exit interview, we also do an interview 3 months after you left. They try and see how we're doing. You left us and you've gone to another company, and how was your experience? Are you rating us better now? Are you still got the same point or whatever reason, the attraction or the reason why you left? So all of that they do it by at the time of leaving, 3 months, 6 months. They put that as part of an alumni, and they track it. Very interesting feedback that we get. The feedback at the time of exit interview is very different from what we get as a response after 3 months.
No, I'm talking about existing people. Can we do an exit interview?
Do they qualify to be there? That's what he's asking, right?
Yeah. Not only do they qualify to be there, is the organization ready to take this talent?
Okay, wonderful.
Both ways. Not for the person who left, for the person who is living, especially with the current technology changes that's happening. It should be done in a proactive manner. It's not that we want to send out people, but can we take stock of the potential? The mundane, assessment centers and development centers where we do this IDP and all that, which gets into the file and not into action.
Yeah, Dean, that takes me to one of the questions which is in the chat box. How to strike a balance in an organization context between innate talent of the person and need of the company? Wonderful question, because very, very unfortunately today the CEO's performance is not gauged over a longer time. It's gauged quarter to quarter by the stock market performance, which has a direct relationship with the top line, bottom line, whatever. So whereas the organizational need is a long term, and that depends upon the process capability and the people development. So the question he says, okay, if you are a CEO, how you will handle the paradox between the two? It can merge definitely, but which is the priority? So you can go ahead, and I can add to that after that.
Definitely, we need to strike a balance. It's a very interesting question from Pius Maria Prasad. Definitely, we can strike a balance. We need hunters, and we need also nurturers. So maybe you carry a bench. See, ultimately, if you look at labor cost, it's hardly even in a highly human capital intensive place. It's not a very high. There are many other areas where we can save cost. Therefore, carrying little extra to balance this is not going to be a challenge. But do you have the wherewithal and will to deal with both?
Absolutely. And the same question asked by one of the CEOs, because when I was talking about what we are talking about, he said, "Hey, I am gauged by quarter to quarter. So I want quick fix." So I narrated the story by, not my original story, the story by Stephen Covey in his book, Seven Habits. So I asked him, if you come to my house and if I have a duck which is yielding a golden egg every day, and if you are my friend and if I ask you to take either the duck or the golden egg of the day, which you will take? He said, I will take the duck. So I said, the duck is the producing capability, whereas the egg is the results. Now, here you know very clearly the duck is the long-term investment, whereas the egg is the short-term output. But whereas in the organization, you are not realizing that people are the long-term investment, like the duck, whereas the results are the short-term. You are doing the reverse. Why? And that gave some thought.
And therefore, I think capability is something beyond limitation. So, do we understand that first frame? I am trying to answer also a question by one Mr. Joseph on what are the top 3 competencies. Can we see capability beyond limitation? Limitation could be from the organization side, from the HR side, or from the individual side. One competency I thought maybe George can add that.
Yeah, I can add one more. Okay, let me put the competency like this. Anyone can count the number of seeds in an apple, but the HR guy should be able to see the number of apples in each seed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I give an example. There was a very, very highly qualified, highly experienced person came for an interview. And in this company, it's for a marketing interview, and 2 people from a prestigious institute interviewed them, and they said the past performance does not substantially proving that this person can perform in the future. So they rejected. So the HR person called, and the HR person never asked about the past, but about the talent, the desires, the preferences, likes, and all those things. At the end of it, he said, this is a material we should not miss. And luckily, there was a discussion between the CEO, everybody, and they decided to hire that person. And that person became a black belt, master black belt, high potential, and still remaining in that organization for the 15 years. So the HR person should be able to see what others could not see in the human being. Now, unfortunately, we are also becoming commodity like any other manager. So people are saying we can do without HR. We are getting our function into that level.
Not only that, our ability to influence the management.
You're right.
See,
Go ahead.
see the number of apples inside the seed is a big challenge.
Yep.
So the third competency would be influencing.
Sorry, I got a bit of a disconnect in between for technical reasons. I'm just trying to catch up. Has Pius' question been answered?
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah, we have addressed that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Good. Yeah. Let's moving on. There's one more. How significant is providing real-time feedback in performance management process?
I think, of course, George has a very famous saying on KISS. Okay. It's a daily event, and we are making it as a ritual every year.
Correct.
And the person knows how he has performed. I must talk about a very interesting CEO. I can even talk about it. LG's chairman, LG Equipments in Coimbatore. He said, it's a day where I would like my employee to come and tell me this is what I deserve because this is what I have contributed, or I have not contributed. Therefore, I'm okay with what I'm getting. So, how do you push this ownership than a third party assessing performance management?
I can add some more to that. In fact, those organizations that have got rid of performance management process kind of believe in what Dean just mentioned. They don't believe in a review that happens once in a year because it needs to happen. It happens on a periodical and regular basis where people get instant feedback continuously. And also, they realize that the objectives that you set 1 year before or 6 months before, it is so dynamic, it changes. So by the time you set and come after a year, that's all gone. It has changed. The organization has changed. The role has changed. So therefore, an instant real-time feedback is what will really work. And they found it to be really useful.
Absolutely.
And
Let me add to that.
Sorry.
Since you said the KISS, I'm tempted to complete that.
Sure.
Yeah, the 4 things which I normally say important to a performance management system is KISS, her, lips, as often as possible. KISS stands for keep it simple and structured, because don't overcomplicate, because we want to see who is the doer, not doer, etc. HER, her, stands for highly emphasize reciprocation. Let it be a two-way process rather than one-way process, because that person should own whatever we say and he should develop. The lips stands for leave it partially separated, because it has 2 components. One is relatively understanding who is contributing and rewarding those contributors. One is nothing in a relative scale, but absolutely understanding each person as a whole and developing to his full potential. And these 2 has to be partially separated, not fully separated, but partially separated. That's an art. And the last one, as soon as possible or as often as possible, that comes to immediate feedback. Now, the performance appraisal has 4 parts: the goal setting, measurement, feedback, and developmental discussion. Ideally speaking, the feedback should be for around 30% and 70% should go into the developmental discussion. The goal setting measurement should be dashboard, which is seen day in and day out with a color code, everything, no argument, everything is digitalized. But unfortunately, the goal setting not being done very clearly, the measurement not being clearly, a lot of time is wasted on negotiating about the rating, because they know that the rating has a bearance to the salary increase, so 2.5, 2.7. So if we resort to, as both of you said, the immediate and constant feedback, like the 1-minute manager says, then we will save a lot of productive time for development, which is future forward. It's not looking back. Over to you.
Just to add to what George said, we were facilitating a PMS for a multinational. We took 2 school systems. One is a Rishi Valley school system, another is a marks-based school system. And when we gave it to the managers, most of them preferred a marks-based school system. And I brought the progress report of few Rishi Valley students and few marks-based students, 2 reputed schools, and everybody preferred the. I said, somebody gets 100% in mathematics. Does it mean he has understood everything in mathematics? Whereas in the Rishi Valley system,
I can give a jovial example before you proceed. Somebody who, my classmate, okay, got 100 out of 100 in maths because he got the equivalent of a Konar guide for maths, Sham series we call, and he used to mug up and write. So once the question came, in the guide there were 2 questions. First question and the second question followed that, and the second question explanation started as per the formula in the previous question. So the second question only came for the exam, and this guy started the answer as per the formula in the previous question. And he got 100 out of 100. Over to you. Sorry.
No, same thing. So we don't look at the qualitative aspects in performance appraisal. We look at the quantitative aspects, and that creates a lot of heartburn, irritation, and nobody is happy with the PMS.
Okay. Now let's go back to something that we discussed earlier. And what about the talent shortages? Is that real? Do we in a country which has got abundant youth and globally every country looking at India, but in India, even our own industries, often we hear that there's tremendous talent shortage. Why do you think it is there, and is it real?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
I don't think there's a talent shortage. There's a thinking shortage, thought leadership shortage. Well, every industry is wanting to look at ready-made talent than building talent. They want to buy talent. How many of us are investing in building talent? Even a new industry which is going to start, the construction time is 1 year, 1.5 years. They don't use that 1.5 years to build talent. When the building is completed, they want to hire and see next 15 days, person has to start and taking. How many of us really think we should customize building talent?
True. George.
Good point. Good point. See, it all boils down to the organization focus. What's my vision? What my mission? The organization, see, Uday Parikh once very beautifully said, organization should be institution building, and he defined as if the organization is drawing the energy from the society, it has a moral obligation to develop the society as a give back. And the society includes the people who are coming from the society to your workplace. We don't own them. We have borrowed them. But unfortunately today, if there is a y-axis on business focus and x-axis on organizational focus, we tend to go more towards the business focus because possibly in the past 20 years, too much of weightage gone to the publicizing the market share companies and the high revenue companies. Say, for example, in the book In Search of Excellence, it was all about the culture, but later it's all about the top line market value.
So in talent, culture becomes a very important component, which somehow is getting relegated for whatever reason. And even if you look at Lee Iacocca on his book, where did he learn his business sense? He learned it from an ordinary visible vendor in the Indian streets, including the financial model, because he borrows in the morning at 5 a.m. at 10% interest and returns the same in the evening. And he is not a chartered accountant, he is not a financial brain, but he is running his business. Maybe he has not scaled it up, he has not grown it. That's the downside of it. But there's some innate capability which if we can nurture. Assuming you're going towards an airport, any airport which is coming up newly, you will see some person coming up and selling chai. He sees a market opportunity there. Do you think that's a talent or not a talent?
It is.
But do we recognize or value that? Or for that matter, the beggars on the street. They have the tremendous patience value. They know they will strike only at 1% of whomsoever they're begging. But they know how to get things done. But somehow we do not see a value or talent there. Saying is a beggar, but he knows who is a client who will pay, who is a client who will not pay.
Absolutely, yeah.
He has not done any course in marketing. So the trick lies in how do we get that intricate part of the human in our discussions, and it won't happen in a formal discussion. It happens more in informal discussion, in gamification, and all those to get this innate capabilities and triggers.
Yeah, I'm reminded about an article that I read in one of the magazines, or probably in a newspaper. I'm sure most of us would have read this. This is about a guy from overseas whose BlackBerry did not work. He kind of travels the globe, and he had no time to get his BlackBerry sorted because he had to go to the BlackBerry place. And it's strictly coded. It takes a lot of time. And someone said, "Why don't you go to the street in Mumbai?" And with a lot of reluctance, he checked and he went there. He said, "A small schoolboy who said he can fix it." And he was amazed, and he said he wasn't sure, but he just wanted to push his luck, so he gave it to him. And he said within half an hour's time, he fixed his BlackBerry and gave it back to him. And this guy is probably a school dropper, but he's got such intelligence with that electronic device that he fixed it. And he said it was fixed completely. It was not a quick fix. And he was saying like, how much time BlackBerry would have taken to fix it. So there is native, if that is what my understanding is, that there are intelligent people around, just that we are so much templated to look at in a particular way and apply a formula in order to arrive at that.
No, the most interesting story is a Formula One tire changing, whom they picked up from Dharavi. And HR would have seen if they had done an antecedent verification, they were all thieves. Okay, but we did not look at the talent in thieving. Okay, and how do we proactively convert that? So I have been instrumental in facilitating many union leaders to come into mainstream, though at the cost of sometimes organization cautioning me that I'm taking a risk. But I saw a potential or a leadership. George, correct me if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, leadership is leadership.
Yeah.
That's another domain. This is another domain.
Somewhere our ability to see that potential of leadership than looking at somebody as negative.
It's true. Now, wanted to ask you something with regards to talent, because I've seen myself when you both were part of Titan, some of the tests that you used to administer as part of your selection. Now, how does that work these days? Given that we've talked enough about talent now, is there a methodology there where we can identify talent, number one, and does it realistically reflect on one's capability?
Okay, let me, we have now improved on whatever we did in Titan. I must share something interesting what we do. We make peers to evaluate the papers. And we also make peers, I'm saying at the bottom of the pyramid, at the front line, and we make peers to sit in the interview also.
Okay.
They can't ask a question, but at the end of the interview, they should say whether the person is selected or not selected. And there are cases where we have found the person has said, I have not done well, the other candidate has done well. And the person who has said, I have not done well, we have selected him for the simple reason he has an excellent attitude on honesty and integrity. So I think a group process in selecting talent is also very, very important of the peers. A thought, it may be controversial, but
No. I've
That's
seen.
good. Go ahead.
I've seen what Dean is saying. We've seen organizations where, as part of the selection panel interview, they're actually one of the peers who sits there, because no one knows better than that particular person who belongs to the team who actually does the job to see how the fitment works. So
now we have gone to the extent that HR doesn't even get involved. Peers are now asked to go and do the selection.
Okay. Well, that's great. Yeah. Right.
John,
Okay.
would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I was about to add the question he asked about some of the psychometric tests which we conducted in Titan.
Correct.
Two opinions. Number one, yes, any instrument which is validated, which can help me to understand the inner algorithms of a person, definitely help me to understand him more. So I agree with that. Number two, I'm not going to decide based on that horoscope alone. That is only one of the input for me to dig out and understand more and more about that person. So back to what Deenan said, as long as I understand that person fully, his preferences, etc., I would be able to serve him and possibly serve the domain in which he is going to work, which is the organization, better. May not be for the long term, because some of the high potentials will not remain with you long term. But that separation also can be made into a win-win situation. I remember one of the organizations where the number two people really overgrown the growth of the organization. So they told the CEO, we wanted to go out and become entrepreneurs. And the CEO said, yes, Let's be partners. I am producing, you are all going to be our franchise. So you have the continuity of the product and the process, and you're going to be entrepreneurs. And they expanded. It's all possible. Now, if I can pick up one of the question here, to what extent the past performance is best indicator of the future performance? I think Joseph is asking. Now, past performance happened in a particular condition. The condition could be culture, condition should be boss, condition could be job description, condition could be market, whatever. If all the conditions are the same in the future, then the past performance can be replicated. But none of the conditions are going to be same. So it can be one of the many indicators, but it's not a concluding evidence for the future performance. Whereas, as we are repeatedly saying, if you understand the native talent, if you know the inner programming, what he has, if that can be used for the future demands. That's why all the star questions happened in the behavioral interviews. Situation, task, action, result, etc., etc. Yes, so that will help. So it's one of the many indicators. It may be a necessary thing. Dean would say even not necessary. I would say maybe necessary, but definitely not the sufficient condition.
I'm not saying it's not necessary, George. Let me go back to the question what Selwyn asked. Psychometric. A very classic case of one of the Titan operators who committed suicide by burning herself. Ms. Amita immediately said, please get her PDT papers. And you know, in the early days, Mr. Amita used to evaluate. He was the vice president, he used to evaluate all the PDT. And he said, why did you select her? She did very well in all other, but in the PDT she was low. And the curve went on the backward side. And he had put on the top suicidal tendencies. For some reason, we had taken her. I cannot say why. But that psychometric was outstanding. That was, in fact, an elimination test than a selection test.
Correct.
So there is a lot of value. So therefore, George, I will not say that I don't believe in that psychometric and all that, but that alone is not a filter.
I'm not saying the psychometric. I'm saying about the past performance.
Yeah, past performance need not be. Context always changes.
Absolutely.
I clearly remember that particular incident that Dean just mentioned. I was there at that time. I was amazed when Amita asked for that particular paper, and when we opened it before we handed over to him, we can see that we are in big trouble because he's marked check. We didn't know the we are not trained. We don't know what he meant by that. But then when this happened, and we knew, and he was quite furious that we let that particular filter go, and not checking on that particular candidate. I've not forgotten that till date, and from that time onward, my faith on those tests grew enormously because there was something that man can see.
I can relate to that test also. I for curiosity, because we are doing for many people, let me do it also. And for me, line by line, the performance came down. So I looked at that and said, if I am sitting for an operator level job, most probably I will get rejected. And yes, I am not the guy who is enjoying repeated job. I want challenge, I want variety. In marriage, I can't ask for. So at least in the job, I will ask for.
True, Josh.
Okay.
There's an interesting question by Christy Anand on NEEM. I don't know how many people understand the word NEEM. It is National Employment Enhancement Mission.
Right.
But the way we deploy NEEM is National Exploitation and Enforcement Mission. We are not investing to enhance. And we are using this as a cheap labor or a flexi labor. And the whole scheme got defeated and got into a lot of challenges. So somewhere in our anxiety to build capabilities, we seem to be more loyal than the king in penny pinching on the cost by saying by taking NEEM we will have a lesser cost, but the intangible loss is going to be very, very huge.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure, Christian, and you're happy with that. I didn't know what NEEM was, so glad that Dean knew what it was. Okay, we're going to take a
No,
quick...
I'm one way an author of NEEM, in the sense we seeded this concept 20 years ago in DuPont, later on Ashok Leyland. Then the current HRD minister was one of the pioneers of even notifying this as a CSR initiative for the entire Uttarakhand. Though legally questionable, it was morally right.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a quick 20-second break, and this is your last chance. So if there are any questions, don't hesitate, type them on, and this will be a last segment. So ask questions, George and Dean. You probably won't get another chance to ask them. This is your chance. We're talking about talent, but don't stop with talent. You can ask anything that's related to HR. So I'm going to take a quick 20-second break, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, I have a question for Parameshwar.
Okay, George mentioned about Parameshwaran. So
Yeah, I just about to jovially ask Parameshwaran. He put happy to see Selvam George after a long time. Which one I should underline? See or after a long time? Joke only.
Right, okay. I'm still waiting for your questions. Now, I have one particular observation that I want to ask you both. Now, how, Nashiman's got a question, we'll come to that shortly. But I want to ask you, isn't it good to have a good mix of talent? I mean, there are different personalities, different talents that come when you look at a bunch of talent. It is always good to have a good mix, isn't it? Rather than have super performers or, mediocre, whatever. It's always good to have a spread. Is that a good idea or?
Absolutely.
Right. That was a very short answer. Good. So you got a Narasimhan's long question. Talent has to manifest and also find avenues. Question is how to bring a structure so every possibility is recognized and channelized to perform and achieve the goal.
Maybe I'll take Narasimhan's question. We also discussed this sometime in our personal conversation. Can we put this 2 + 2 + 2 as a process? No individual should be in the same role for a specified period, depending on the organizational context. At least 2 roles you should undergo. While we talk job rotation in a very loose way, as a structure, then 2 locations and 2 products. That channelizes his energies to look at things differently.
Oh, that's great. George, any?
Good point. And Narasimhan asked for a structure. I don't know whether I can give a structure. As Dean says, it's a little difficult, but I can give a culture. And the culture with the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars I call as 4F. The first F is freedom to express. Anybody should be able to talk to anybody right from bottom to top, whatever they want to say. Relevant, not relevant, absolutely no problem. The second F, freedom to experiment. They should be allowed to experiment. Failure should be treated as part of the learning process, not as a punishment tool. Southwest Airlines is talking about the most glorified mistake people are making every year. They present it in front of the CEO, and based on the learning, they even award. So people are asking the CEO whether you are creating the mistake-making culture, and he says no. People need not repeat the mistake because everybody learn from each other, and they need not put under the carpet. Now, coming back to the third F, freedom to explore. Like Dean said, it's not within the job description of the 2 + 2 + 2. Like, he should be able to explore beyond what he's doing. One of the companies which I worked for has the 85-15 rule. 85% of the time you work what you are hired for, but 15% of the time you work on anything what is interesting to you. And if it's yielding results, you can be shift there, you can grow that, all that. And the last F, freedom to enjoy. If you want the FUND in the company, if you have to write FUN first, then the D will follow quickly. So, freedom to express, freedom to experiment, freedom to explore, freedom to enjoy. If you do that, that will be a culture where the individual will align with the organization and he will give the best, and the best is blossoming out. You would be able to identify him as a full person and utilize wherever you can utilize. Wherever he is in the universe, he will remember your organization, he will remember your coaching and nurturing. Over to you.
I will only add, George, add a word responsible as a prefix. Responsible freedom, responsible fun, whatever.
Yeah.
There you go, folks, that you've been listening to the masters of the trade, talent, people that I've respected throughout my career, and good to come back and relate. And this is just a show for us in 1 hour, but I've been constantly engaging with these two gentlemen over a long period of time, and I've been personally benefited with my enriched knowledge by talking, and they sharing their experience with me. So it's wonderful, and I hope to connect with you both time and again. I said this to George before. We can look at probably a series once in a month or something, continue where we left, and for the sake of knowledge sharing, I know you both belong to that particular group who like to and love to share knowledge. So excellent to have you both, and I think it's been a very good session overall, and we've had a very good number of participants, good number of questions. I'm going to check if there's one last question there so that we're all done. So is there anything you guys want to add? You may just add, or we may just conclude. Any last words of wisdom as an advice?
I think my sincere thanks to the people who asked the question, because that helped us to bring whatever is relevant to them and possibly whatever is best in us also. And thank you for moderating. And Dean, wonderful to catch up with you after a long time.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Selwyn. I just want to leave a small, let us all have mental inside and intel outside.
Thank you so much, and wonderful. Good to catch up, and we certainly want to catch up with you both again on another time, another show. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.